Hey, welcome to the newest episode of the Articulate Ox podcast. I am your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for joining me today. God, I say this every time, but this interview was really just one of the best. When I started this podcast, I have to admit that a little bit came from a place of feeling disconnected from the rest of the artistic community and not really knowing a lot of I knew a lot of people who did different sort of art stuff, but in my general niche and the space that I like to be creative in, I really don't know a lot of people that really sort of explore that same area, and it can be sort of a lonely pursuit. And I sort of was hoping that through this podcast, I'd find ways to meet new people and just sort of connect better with people that are, and I say more of my ilk, I guess would be the way to put it. Obviously I want to talk about people that are all over the spectrum, but there's a little bit of selfishness. I'm like, there's got to be some people out there that maybe I can relate to better than some of the other artists that I've met in my day-to-day life. No offense to them, but I wasn't really prepared for how much that sort of happened in this interview here with Jared. Jared Egol popped up on my feed because Esoteric, one of my favorite rappers, one of his favorite rappers, had shared something out about a project he was working on with Jared, where he had recorded some exclusive new songs for a Kickstarter that Jared was doing about a film and graphic novel that we talk about here called Planet Orson. It's a stop motion animation project / graphic novel that talks about the life of Orson Welles through the lens of the Transformers. And if you aren't aware, Orson Welles is the voice of one of the Transformers, Unicron, in the 1986 Transformers animated movie, and that would end up being Orson Welles' last film, which is interesting when you consider that he started with Citizen Kane, and that's just such a long road to travel and so much life to be lived in between. And I really can't do justice to describing what Jared is trying to do with this project. He does all that justice in the episode, so I'm going to save that for him to explain to you. I couldn't believe how often prior to this conversation and my conversations back and forth with Jared, and then even during the conversations, that we stumbled upon these things that we had either very similar experiences or had kind of targeted on very similar people, and it's just this was a great experience. And I invited Jared back. I hope he comes back again in the future to talk about this project when it's a little further down the road. And he seems like a very interesting, self-aware person, and it was an absolute pleasure getting to know him. It's funny, as I'm recording this, I see a comment he left on my Instagram popping up right now as a notification. But what's up, Jared? So this dude's the man. So check him out. Follow the project. We recorded this in mid-July, so I believe this will be coming out towards the end of September. I'm sure there's been some progress made between now and then, so maybe you can check online and see what Jared's been up to. And so thank you so much for joining us. Follow him on social media. Follow me on social media at Soma79. And what the hell, follow Esoteric on social media. He's not hard to find, Esoteric of Czarface. His music's amazing, and we definitely delivered him some flowers today. So peace, everyone. Thank you very much. Hey, welcome to the newest episode of the Articulate Ox podcast. I am your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for being here. My guest today is Jared Egol. I got that right? I know I asked you a few minutes ago.
And right around Starbucks stuff.
Yeah, I am super excited to announce, although everybody have known this is airing a few months later, that his Kickstarter for his graphic novel, Planet Orson, has been funded as of this morning. So congratulations, Jared.
Thank you so much, man. Really
awesome, man. It's great. It's great to be able to have this interview with that all taken care of. So because it's supposed to end in a few days, right?
Yeah. Like in I think 2 or 3 days now. And this is my first ever podcast that is not with someone I'd ever met previously. Awesome. And so this is just a huge honor for me, man. And I love the multi-hyphenate eclectic, artistic sensibility you have. You're a jack of all trades. I've just loved exploring your page and seeing what you're all about. I have so many people I need to support now because of you. So thank you.
Oh man, cool. It's funny because like I feel the same way. Once I started digging deep in what you're doing, I felt this like kindred, like I'm like, this dude's like me, because I'm working on my own little, like your film is like bigger in scope than mine, but I'm working on my own film. I went to film school years ago. I'm finally doing it. And it's like a lot of the stuff you talked about, I could relate so much to. And it's a pleasure like to be able to connect with someone like you. Obviously, both huge fans of Esoteric. Curious how that
Yeah.
happened for someone down south, because I feel like he was our unkept secret. He was our best kept secret up here for years.
And
But
a Heat fan.
is he? I don't know.
No,
I see him.
no,
Oh,
no, me.
oh, it's true. Yeah, man. That's yeah. I'll tell you, because he is a Celtics fan. Like, I have
I
this
know.
shirt that I wear that I bought off him years ago. That's when he had a single called Reggie Lewis is watching, and it was
Oh,
after
okay.
Reggie Lewis passed away. And there's a picture of him, and it said 35 and 7 all that stuff in the back. It's my know I'm in good shape shirt, because it
Mhm.
only fits me when I'm in like the best person possible like version of my body. So I always
Okay.
keep it around. So whatever I'm wearing it, I'm feeling good. So I think I'm about 4 pounds away from that, but let's hope. All right, so let's talk about you, because let's first talk about this project, because
Okay.
we first talked about it. I had to go read the Kickstarter a few times, just do a lot of research to really get my mind around it. But it sounds amazing.
Thank you.
It got me to see the Transformers animated movie for the first time. So thank you for that, because that inspired me a lot. So let's talk a little bit about what this project is, then we'll go in the zillion different directions that this could possibly take.
Awesome. First of all, yeah, thank you so much. I'd be remiss to not begin with my professor in grad school, Ron Freeman, who wrote the original Transformers and GI Joe cartoons. Like
Now,
he
so
wrote.
was that a coincidence? Because I saw that I mean, you were a Transformers fan as a kid. So that's just like the universe is put
Listen,
everyone up for you?
when I found out I was going to be a dad, I double majored in pre-med and creative writing at the University of Florida, taken all the way up to biochem, was prepping for the MCAT. Going to be a dad like my daughter. My father wanted to, I'd torn my ACLs playing football. I wanted to do an MD PhD in non-invasive joint repair, and I had my whole thing set up. It wasn't a passion though. The passion was in the writing. I'd come back from chemistry class and just break down my stories in workshops. And so when I was told by one of my thesis advisors in undergrad that I write very cinematically, that screenwriting is a lot more lucrative than the self-publishing world of prose.
Than almost
Um,
any other sort of writing,
Right,
actually, or
right,
creative
right.
writing at
Yeah,
least.
yeah, absolutely. Especially back then, only a few years after like the gold rush of Joe Esterhaas and the James Cameron mega deals. And
Right. And even like the
I
Goodwill Hunting success stories, whereas like, oh, this could be any two random dudes from Southie that do this,
good. That's a really interesting story. I'm glad you brought that up. So before I get into Ron, I was super afraid to tell my physician father. My dad was like a Dr. House. He ran an ICU in Miami for several years. He was really irascible, and he loved diagnosing everybody as not him. He was incredibly pointed, and you'd ask him for like a solution to a problem, and within you'd be like, you give him a paragraph of a problem, and within a millisecond, you'd be like, all right, there's 6 things you have to do. It's like, this is a guy who dealt with life and death like all the time and had to know every modality of medicine.
right?
And so the
He could
fact
be
that I'm
very
telling,
objective about it.
so he thought. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
it's impossible to not be objective when you're God, Um,
Yeah, a lot of doctors.
what's
Yeah.
the this isn't so much a joke about intensivists, but what's the difference between God and an orthopedic surgeon? God doesn't think he's an orthopedic surgeon.
I thought it was gonna be. I thought the punchline's gonna be something about God's golf game, but no. But that makes a lot more sense what you just said.
So as someone who's had 3 operations, from those self-affirmed gods, I can tell you that they are not.
Yeah.
Based on
ACL is a
how.
tough one too.
Yeah, not so much now, but like the shoulder, there's actually something called failed shoulder surgery syndrome, which is where your rotator cuff, basically adheres into like a, a, a cast of like crepitation and stiffness because
Oof.
it's such a traumatic thing, and the joint is so mobile and multi-directional, multi-planar that it's a huge trauma. And so like as a result of that, I like barely have any range of motion. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have had the surgery done altogether. But anyways,
Yeah.
I was coming to terms with the fact that I didn't want to be a doctor like my dad, and now I had to tell him that I thought that the right thing for me to be the best father that I could for my daughter, who I knew was on the way, was to be a film, to be an artist. You know, choose the secure path, which obviously it's not.
I know.
But it was who I was, and if I was going to be the best dad I could be, I better not be hiding who I am.
It's
And
an
so,
excellent point, man. I went through similar stuff in my life. It's like you can't repress it, man. Let it out and make the best of it.
and kids are the best polygraph out there, man. You know, they know you're full of shit before anybody, because if you're full of shit, it impacts them directly.
Right.
You know, and you do not do that. And so, like, it's actually been a good thing to see, for my daughter to see me struggling. And I tell her, hey, this is what I chose. And so when you see the difficult times, know that you can get over them if you have the right resources in place. But it's not believe in yourself and then everything snaps into place, especially not in this world. But anyways,
Right. Yep.
I digress. So I told my father that I think I had a Discovery Channel level interest, avocation in medicine. I didn't want to go through all the BS and misery that I know he went through. He'd been sued before, and just all that nonsense. Insurance getting worse and worse, and you spend 7 minutes with a patient. How can you know a story which is so imperative that about this? How are you going to heal their health if you can't know who they are?
And it's also, a lot of people don't know them. A lot of people are so unself-aware, you can't even trust them to tell you who they. It must be insanely frustrating for somebody.
Very, very, very important. It's you can't, if you can't listen to them, you can't hear what they're hiding, and you can't spend the time decoding that and figuring out, for instance, why they're hiding what they're hiding, and does what they're hiding have anything to do with how they're feeling?
Right, because the first person we lie to about our health is ourselves. That's
I absolutely. And so I had to tell my dad that I think I'm a writer before I'm a doctor. Since then, I've thought about going back to medical school, but so I did that. I told him that, and then when I got back up to college, he was kind of mute about it. But then when I got back up to college, there was a box waiting for me, and it was just a huge package filled with all this stuff, just gushing with support for my screenwriting.
From your dad?
Yeah, from my dad.
Wow.
From my dad. The guy who, when I got one A minus, was like, oh, what's the A minus in? Or just hypercritical. It was he got me 2 copies of screenplays. The bound ones that they sell in Barnes and Noble. Good Will Hunting and A Beautiful Mind. There were a couple other books on structure. He gave me a shirt that says, "Watch what you say, or I'll put you in my novel." There was he got me, I think, a Waterman pen with a poem engraved on it that said something like may your writing be liberating, may your words flow fast and free, may your characters be multifarious, may none resemble me.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
He put some thought into this.
He was a writer himself, man, and he didn't get to be a filmmaker. He didn't get to be an artist.
Right.
He was told he had to go to med school, basically.
Wow.
And so,
what do you think? What were his? Do you know what his specific ambitions were as a writer? Considering he came from a different time as us and different background.
Well, I know his brother Lou in Austining in New York, or Peekskill now. He was a very accomplished fiction writer, and he was several years older than my dad. He was of the generation who had Action Comics #1 and threw it out.
Wow. Oh, God, heartbreaking.
my dad was of the Iron Man #1 generation, and luckily
my dad was the Mickey Mantle card generation.
Yeah. Mickey was my favorite player growing up, despite me being born in 1985. Fancy that. My dad really never talked much about what type of writing he wanted to do, but I knew it was always very good, as was my mom's. And so his uncle was really the only illumination I had to any idea that side of the family had that desire. And my dad ingested movies. My dad could talk saliently and topically about why they didn't work. Much like a doctor can talk about why your pancreas doesn't work.
Right.
And he had a kind of an armamentarium of I guess aesthetic skills to absorb material and kind of winnow out what was good and what wasn't good. But he never really did much in terms of self-expression. I don't even think he ever made a short film. But
well, back then, I mean, well, it's like that's the crazy thing now, because when I graduated film school, I was the last class in 1999 that was learning on literally reels where I was snipping things apart and scotch taping it together. And then I interviewed somebody who stayed one more year than me at my school a few months ago, and he was like, "Yeah, the next year we started doing Avid." And you can't even. It's like it's to explain to you how much harder it is to be scotch taping film together that you did in a Bolex that you can't see for weeks versus like this now. I mean, like it's making a film back then. It's just like I can't even imagine. Like it's just you flush so much money down the drain before you even know if you got anything usable.
Absolutely, and you know they think they romanticize it. Oh, that just means you put more effort into it. Like if you have to type everything out on a typewriter, you're going to be more precious.
Yeah.
Like that's
it means you sweat more bullets.
We all have to fail.
Right.
It's just, do we have the tools to quickly unfail?
Right. Or to fail quickly so that we can learn quicker. Because it's like if it takes you forever to fail, you're going to learn slower.
And if you throw out what you have, like and now we can save everything. Let's say something is 90% of a failure, but 10% is divine. You know, but it's not divine in the context of that other 90%. But it would be in a different 90%. 10 drafts down the line.
It's funny you mentioned that, because literally right before we started, I'm trying to, like, I used to draw Garfield on everything when I was a kid as my inspiration. I want to get a tattoo of Garfield on my leg where I have my other ones, but I want to use a sketch that I try to find a sketch that I drew when I was a kid and get that version of it. But like, so I was looking through, I have every notebook. I found my nursery school and kindergarten graduation certificates. And I still only found one Garfield sketch and it wasn't a good one, but I was literally right before when you messaged me saying that you were ready, like I was like knee deep in like this is,
oh my god,
it's actually pretty funny too, because this is only part of them, but I gotta see one, man.
I gotta see one. Let's go.
This is on the cover of my old notebook was Matt and Ben winning the Oscar.
Oh my god,
I cut this out and put it there. So this might be the one with the Garfield in it, but I have like everything, man. And it's like,
oh dude, is that why you interviewed the artist who does Garfield from memory?
That was part of it, yeah.
Dude, I got this like triptych for the holidays from my sister that was by her.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So, and Garfield was the only thing I remember how to draw still. I mean, it's still done with the quality of the fourth grader.
Right.
But so that's so cool. And funny enough, one of the other projects. So the screenplay that my dad sent me, Good Will Hunting and A Beautiful Mind, I actually combined the two to create a screenplay called Clay Tommy, which actually at one point had Michael Clark Duncan looking at it.
That's a great name, Clay Tommy. I don't know what that means, but I love it.
I was a potter in high school, and this is about I'm not going to try to pitch the whole thing, but it did quite well. It's what got me representation. It's about an artist, son of a father, kind of a plutocratic mayoral father on the coast in a wealthy town in Palm Beach. The joke is that he's the middle child born between elections, and he has to simultaneously presented to the world all the time, but is just emotionally hollowed out by this cretinous individual to the point where he decamps to an imaginary world where he's literally the apex of everything in his mind. He's an A-list actor, he's Hall of Fame athlete in every vocation. By the time he was 18, more trillionaire athlete, mathlete, everything you can imagine, literally going down the channel but separating Palm Beach and Florida are 100 foot or 100-meter statues, like cast like the Colossus of Rhodes, each one of a different version of his avocation, of his job. Literally in his mind, he's the best at everything until he encounters what would have been the Michael Clark Duncan character in a psychotic fugue, who and discovers that he actually is a 1 in a billion ceramic talent, and the entire movie then becomes breaking him out of his imaginary world to realize his full potential.
That's an idea too. That like this is one that got your representation. You could pitch that today. Like,
well, the hope is that.
I mean, you might have just done it actually. No, I think you just did pitch it today.
That's the project that got me started, and my manager. I had that script, and then I had another one that did pretty well. Like going back to the whole medical thing, Viv Through the Night was the other one. It's about an anesthesiologist whose mother splits into two personalities, and the only personality capable of loving her is dying of a terminal illness. So the only time she can be loved by this woman is when she's dying, and when she remits and is healthy, they can't have a relationship.
That's brutal. That's something to sick your teeth into. Wow.
And so the reception for me, going back to even undergrad, like people would read their stuff in their workshops and they'd be like, oh, like I like this, I didn't like this. Yeah. And whenever it came to me, we finished reading and it was just
which is probably a good sign. Like it might not have felt that way.
And so when I meet people who actually say something, even if it's I don't understand this, that's more helpful than the silence. So like my manager, my first manager, and I'll always be so grateful to him. I gave him Clay Tommy, and when I flew out to LA to meet him, it's after the same script had placed in a film festival in Oaxaca, Mexico, which was incredible at the time. It doesn't exist anymore. They had some earthquakes and a lot of money issues, and it's really sad. But back then it was like on par with Sundance. In fact, Sundance was one of their sponsors. So I flew out to LA to meet my manager at the time, and he's like, yeah, I just had to meet you to make sure you weren't this person in this Clay Tommy script. And he liked it, but he's like, I don't know what to do with this. And so that's sort of when we went to the IP route. And funny enough, you brought up Garfield. Before I gave him like a list of like 10 different movies I wanted to do, one of which was like an adaptation of Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut, but like done in like the social media era, where like the number of likes or thumbs down you get determines like the level of shot. I don't know if you're familiar with that story.
It's basically funny because my film mentor in film school, he wrote the script for Slaughterhouse-5.
Really?
Name Steven what the
Geller, right?
Yeah, Geller, yeah. Good Lord, where'd you pull that from?
Slaughterhouse-5 is only my favorite book and movie.
Wow, yeah, he was my advisor when I went to BU.
George Roy Hill directed it. I'm like, is he still with us?
Steve, I think he is. I looked him up a couple years because I'm trying to think of people from my college days I might have on, and he was one of the names. But like, he was an interesting dude back then, and I can't imagine he must be super interesting now. I'll just leave it at that. But like, yeah, he was a really great teacher.
Dude, the number
inspired the shit out of me. He told me this. I was a huge Fellini fan. He got me into Fellini, and he told me these stories of meeting like Fellini and Marcello Mastroianni. I think the guy's name. He was the guy's name from La Dolce Vita and 8½. Yeah. I just was like, I was triple in on that shit. So,
dude.
And one of my favorite moments with him was I go, "You ever see the movie Great White Hype? You ever see that movie with?" And he was like, "Yeah, I love that movie." I'm like, oh, so man, that's a great with Irish.
Don't you love when you have these megaton artists who just love mainstream shit?
Yeah. Stanley Kubrick, when he passed away, they asked his wife what she said, what some of his favorite movies were, and she said one of them was White Men Can't Jump, and I'm like, I love it.
My favorite movie is probably Office Space.
Great movie, man. I lived it. I loved it.
I dressed up as Milton for homecoming and dunked a basketball as the anchor on the tug of war team dressed up as Milton. In grad school, I wrote a short film about the rise of Milton, how he goes from, this big man on campus and like the generation that takes place around his stapler to turn him into the character in the movie who Mike Judge actually knew, who my producer knows as well, because Eric worked on Beavis and Butthead.
Wow. All right. I'm going to stop you right here. This will be the first time I'm going to invite somebody back on the podcast during an episode, but I feel like there's already a million things that I want to ask you about that we're not even going to have time for. So this is like, I love your story. Let's all right. But we got to get back a little bit to Planet. I don't think we've even explained what Planet Orson is yet. And that's awesome.
Who the hell knows, man? It doesn't matter. I feel like it'll find its audience.
Especially now that it's funded, man. We're not like, there's no hat in hand today.
The graphic novel's funded. And, this is maybe a point that we could have been a little more clear about. So, Planet Orson, real quick, is in its cinematic form is going to be a Hollywood level fan film, not at all affiliated with Hasbro, not at all exploiting any of the intellectual property. There will be no trademark discrepancies. We retain no rights. That's why we're self-funding it. We will make no money from this, and it is all about recounting the story of Orson Welles through the lens of the Transformer character, the last character he voiced, Unicron, the giant planet-eating monster that was again written by my
playing in the background. I put it on.
Dude, awesome, and which I wouldn't have been able to put together had I not had the brilliant guidance of my father figure, Ron Friedman, who that's him as Iron Man holding Spider-Woman because he was best friends with Stan Lee. You can see right there.
God, I gotta read. How
And
old is this book? I'm gonna be ordering that
this
right
book
after.
is brand new. Oh no, not brand new. Probably I think less fewer than 10 years old. And honestly, the best thing about it is by reading this, you're not just learning some inside story. You're gaining a father in paperback. Like that's what Ron has been to me. He
Wow.
is like a father figure. I speak to him like twice a week, and what this is a warm gush of reassurance to every kid who wants to be an artist who never did, told in the same colloquial style that Ron would teach a class. He'd pause the Transformers as they transform and say, "This is why we call them garbage cans fucking." And
Ron, I
he
just want to tell you, if you're watching, you just sold one more book because I just ordered it, so it's on the way.
Oh, dude, fantastic, man. Yeah, Ron is he's everything to me. I mean, yeah, he knew Orson Welles, but it's really the point of me going to Chapman for film school was to basically, if I'm told by Julie Kirkham, who was one of the producers on Good Will Hunting and ran Quentin Tarantino's A Band Apart on Orion, and Larry Gross, whose commentary on any film that has been written is infinitely more literary than probably
The film itself.
the film itself. Exactly.
Yeah.
Having these people say that you deserve to keep going, and this Tom Mankiewicz, whose uncle wrote Citizen Kane, whose dad did All About Eve or Cleopatra, which I just started watching. Thank
Yeah.
God, Max has some good films on it.
It's funny about that because we talk a lot as artists about approval and gaining people's approval and what that means. My attitude has always been, I don't care what 99% of the people think, but when you get the approval from those certain people that matters, like those people, like you just mentioned, that gave you the nod, keep going. That's what really counts. That's worth 20,000 Facebook likes.
When you want to exactly when you want to cross the threshold into income, into turning it into a vocation that will create resource for yourself. It is great to have the self-esteem and to have the tools necessary to continue doing art. For instance, from the time I was in the fifth grade, I'd walk around outside with my headphones on and just pacing, dissociating, thinking. I didn't realize that was writing.
Good Lord, me too.
And eventually it turned into emailing myself and then writing, going to Starbucks and or whatever coffee shops available, and then eventually one day I just started getting paid for it. And so people like Ron were the influence on that. And so going back to Planet Orson, one of the ideas I developed with my manager at the time was the idea of of Orson Welles having his story told to Unicron was the idea I came up with. So think like not completely a one for one, but like structurally, A Christmas Carol, A Monster Calls, any of these films that kind of present you with an inquisitor figure
confronting you over the decisions of your life to some degree.
Right. Who is episodically challenging you to gain clarity around your own flaws,
defending your life, Albert Brooks.
Right. And so our film finds Orson at the end, consumed with his own, cinematic destiny and his own real preoccupation and evasion of anything but creating work. And one of the things about Orson is you've seen how many books have been written about him. Like part of his stature is in applying his magician's deftness to his own life, reinventing himself as a tool to continue to create. Whether that's out of boredom, whether that's out of defense, who knows? The fact is he has the span and capacity to do it. It's rumored that he scored not that IQ is anything, but I think at the extremes it can be something, just like an SAT score. And so he scored, I don't know if it was a Stanford Binet back then, but a 185 while completely bombing the math. And so he had these resources from a young, precocious age, and to do things. And I actually find the man to be far more interesting than the films. The films are of course powerhouses,
right?
That deserve to have planets named after each of them. But still it's something that the man himself continues to defy classification to the point where every film that has been made about him casts him in the role as some antagonistic force of genius in nature that needs to be surmounted. You think me and Orson Welles. Zac Efron plays a stagehand who aspires to theatrical greatness, while Orson Welles is the master playwright and director of the theater that he needs to overcome. Orson has the same love interest, and blah blah blah. He's a genius. And Mank, most recently, David Fincher's film on Netflix, Orson is the
I've never seen that. I gotta watch that.
Yeah. Well,
that didn't come up in my research, but I remember it coming out and wanting to watch it.
It's not a. I mean, Peter Bogdanovich wouldn't approve of it because it's mostly written from the Pauline Kael article, Raising Cain. Pauline Kael is in the pantheon. We would not have film as we know it without people like Pauline Kael, Roger Ebert, Susan Sontag, people like that,
Leonard Maltin,
right? Absolutely, who hated the Transformers '86 film. But then again, everybody probably saw it as a derivative of Star Wars. If you look at RC, the female character, right, she's got Princess Leia's Mexican revolutionary buns, as her cybernetic ears.
But Star Wars had such a huge shadow back then. It's how do you blame them? And it's like
right, and then they said that Star Wars was influenced by The Hidden Fortress by Kurosawa, who also did Rashomon. And what was influenced by what influenced Rashomon? Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
And so you have this luminary who was forced at the end of his life to voice this character that is now consuming his reputation. It's Orson Welles voiced Unicron. Ha ha ha. Oh, it's Orson Welles did stupid frozen peas commercials, and I can hear the outtakes on YouTube. Ha ha ha. It's Orson Welles got drunk drinking Parmesan wine. Ha ha ha. We've gone from a genius to the joke. And so my film, under parody, classification, usually parody exists to take an existing property and reclassify it around social commentary to humorize.
Parody comes up a lot on this podcast because a lot of the stuff people do fall into that category.
So we're trying to take something that is inherently humorous to people, the cynicism of these characters. Ron used to pause the Transformers shows in film school and say, when they'd announce the names, like Wheeljack, Transform. He'd be like, hey kids, buy this shit.
You know what's funny? It occurred to me watching that movie, and I'm not a drinker anymore. This probably tells you why I'm not. But I was thinking, if I took a sip every time they made that sound of beer and took a shot every time they played that "You Got the Touch" song, I would be dead by like 20 minutes in. But I loved it. And the other thing I liked with that movie too, I don't know if they got lucky if this is sort of the thing, but like because robots move so much like this, the old school animation kind of works better. Because old school animation is always a little janky, but because they're robots, you kind of like forgive that completely. At least I did, and I was like, I love it.
I have to ask you a question. So, have you seen any of the newer Transformers films?
It's funny. For all the stuff I love, and I have a wall full of old toys back then from my childhood, I only had one Transformer, and it's this one right here. What's it called?
Thundercracker.
Okay, the only reason I had this is because I remember there was a kid named Jimmy Payne, who I hope now is going by James Payne, because that's a great name, who my parents bought this for him as a birthday gift when I was a real little kid, and one of us got sick and couldn't go to the party, so it sat wrapped up for like a year, and I couldn't touch it till eventually the kid moved and we never saw him again, and then I eventually got this. So I think Transformers were just a little bit too expensive of a toy. I had all the Star Wars figures and all that.
They were definitely a gentrifying toy. Yeah, and it's not fair. And a lot of people who purchase them now with money are the people who couldn't afford them back then.
And I would say too, that's some of my toys are like that too. So it's
very true and very sad. I'll tell you though that if you want, people make cheap 3D printed wings for that toy. You can get.
That's what I'm thinking. Something's got to be missing from this, and I'm scared to sort of mess.
Yeah. It's not just an experimental jet car that races through Death Valley. It has wings. It's an F-15. Right. It has wings. It has missiles. It has fists that if you pop behind the cockpit by the chest area, those are actually his arms underneath the cockpit. So in the middle, they pop those out.
I see these. I'll have to go on.
But then if you go up into the middle, right where like it looks like he has boobs.
Yep. Here.
Put those two things in the middle. Those two panels. Push them out towards the back.
Even as a kid, I couldn't do this shit.
It's okay. So like the thing underneath the orange window, like in the middle of the plane, those fold out and those would become his arms. And then
all right, I can kind of see it now. Yeah. All right, I'll have to mess with this. Being on cam. Oh, here we go. Now things are happening.
There you go. Oh, you're learning something new. Now you're transforming him. Yeah.
I got a GoBot in the other room I could use some help from. All right,
you basically have to watch a fourth grade, human reproduction video to transform it because it's like funny the
it's gonna break too, so I gotta stop doing it. But
okay, yeah. So they're fists you can get. You can really spruce it up if you care. If not, you can probably sell that for $20-25 now.
oh, really?
Yeah. They're super valuable, and that's actually how I was able to take care of my daughter. Is I had curated a collection. I can send you pictures. It's on
I saw some online. Yeah, that you had a
cool.
So as a kid, you were super. I was probably into I was into He-Man and superheroes and Star Wars. Transformers was your love, huh?
Absolutely. My dad was huge into it. My dad, like I said, I wrote in his obituary, he's never far from his inner child.
Oh, we talk about that a lot here. It's like the inner child. It's like, why does the inner child have to be? Why does our childhood self have to be different from our? It's like it's in continuation. We're still the same person.
It's not. It's not. We just have like this patina of age that and propriety that covers it and denies ourselves. And so honestly,
it attaches shame to it too for some reason.
Absolutely. And so that's one of the reasons why, to me, LinkedIn is like staring into the void. I see all these people who are free spirits, punk ass kids, just awesome, cool kids. It's like, you look at it, they go, they just restructured. I'm hoping I can leverage my synergies elsewhere.
I always say LinkedIn is the fake of all the social media platforms. LinkedIn is the fakest. It's like, listen, you don't care about your company's ROI like that. You're not fooling anybody.
No. It's like an elevator got stuck and nobody's trying to fart.
That's it. Yeah.
It's truly an atrocity. But it is where I met Eric, my producer. I reached out to him during COVID.
It is a good place to get in touch with people you might not respond to on other platforms. I found that.
Well, I hate asking, introducing myself because you have to do this bullshit. And if you want to like curate the emails and make them individualized, it's exhausting. And so to like have to look up, but I saw that Eric was raising some money for Black Lives Matter with some free reads, or you donate to a charity, and I had donated to a couple, particularly the United Negro College Fund is very important to me. Yep. I long for the day when, like,
more so now than ever, probably.
Not that I have much to do with it financially now because it's been tough, but like the day that someone says I went to Howard and they don't assume you or and they could easily say I went to Harvard and there's no difference. Like that to me would be ideal. I don't know if you've seen like the picture of Einstein giving a lecture, I think in South Carolina in HBCU teaching quantum physics, make you cry. Anyways, like Eric, being of Filipino descent, has dealt with a lot of racism. I've dealt with anti-Semitism. I had a swastika drawn on a board of mine, and it's obviously going in the wrong direction.
Right.
So
we're at the point where things people used to whisper in quiet, they have no problem screaming at the top of their lungs.
So this is actually, I'm really glad we can bring this up. So I sent Eric a receipt from my donation, and one of the things I hope to do is to continue to provide more substantial ones in the future. They're really cool. Like they send you a packet of seeds to remind you of the seeds you've planted with each donation. And so I sent Eric my script, and he had only been looking at like teleplays, but then he saw what was happening, and this was during COVID. So the Orson Welles Transformers script that we briefly touched upon, it's basically Orson Welles being interviewed by these Transformers, and it's a cradle to grave biopic, told through the lens of the Transformers, starting at the joke and arriving at the genius instead of starting at the genius and arriving at the joke. And so
how long would you estimate, like how many minutes do you think the runtime would be on this?
Oh, probably right around 2 hours because
okay, cool.
The script is 114 pages, but I write with kind of a fiction writing density. I never really lost. I don't have the most economy on the page, but and I've been told that sometimes it lacks in clarity, and that
I've been told the same thing.
One of the things I'm starting to wonder is to say that someone is unclear, is that like a form of discrimination or judgment. Like, who's to say someone else is or isn't clear to themselves?
I run into that as well.
And so,
yeah.
like, it's allowed to be unclear to you, but to state it as a fact that it is unclear to a populace is to assume the retention and understanding of everyone who else will experience it.
Exactly. And it's like, if you're writing something that's tailored to the audience of the one teacher that's reading it, you have to go to their prejudice essentially in order to get the passing grade, whether
right. And there's an idea that artists, are constantly working towards a diminishing audience of one, which is themselves. Like,
that comes up with Orson Welles a lot too.
Yeah, and Terrence Malick is often geared for each successive film, making it more and more for himself, and the same with Wes Anderson now.
Yeah, and he's not getting the wide releases that it's like that.
No, well, nobody is. I mean, heck, Francis Ford Coppola has to use his wine money to even fund the film now.
I know, it's funny too, because I was thinking, watching some of the Orson Welles documentaries, how much he seemed like a mix between Francis Ford Coppola and Marlon Brando in the older years.
He resented Brando because he wanted to be in The Godfather.
Oh, did he? Did he see himself as Corleone?
Absolutely.
Wow.
There's actually a line in my screenplay where Orson goes, fuck Brando, fuck The Godfather. Like, it was a real thing. Orson had a few plum roles that, but by then he was already kind of on the way out of the inner circle. And
that's a good point about Welles too, is that like, even like, so I went to film school. I know my high level Orson Welles before I started doing kind of a deep dive in for this conversation. But I forgot about the fact that he really wasn't a success. I mean, in terms of making quality films, he was successful, but even Citizen Kane didn't do well. He didn't really have commercial success.
Nothing that he really did came with a level of acclaim that was concomitant to the reputation he had for producing that. Like, everything that he
was in his own shadow forever.
Everything was shrouded in some level of dissent. Really, the only purification and amnesty that he received on any project was probably The War of the Worlds, and that wasn't even acclaim. That was people reacting to the first ever high quality fake news. But Orson also did to great acclaim prior to that. He was hired, or he was funded by FDR's Federal Theater Project at the age of 20 to do a recreation of Macbeth. It's called Voodoo Macbeth. Instead of in Scotland, he had it set in Henri Christophe's Haiti, surrounding, all black cast, staged in Harlem in a time where that was not at all fashionable, and, replacing the witches with, voodoo practitioners. And that was incredibly well received. The younger he was, the more well received his stuff was, and not just because it was lower down on the pyramid or it was a smaller pond. It was because he had a command back then that would have been on par with anybody. Like, he was a published opera critic, I think, by 10 in like the Chicago Tribune, I think it was called. Like, he wrote a textbook on Shakespeare with his headmaster at the Todd School for college students when he was 15. It's called Everybody's Shakespeare. It was used in colleges.
His presence is undeniable when you see him on film. I can't imagine what a kid like him at 10 or 15 would have been like to be around.
And that's where imagine that top heaviness, carrying that around with you. And in my script, we talk about how he jokes that he started at the top and has been working his way down ever since. I rephrased it as imagine being told from the time you can walk that you can do whatever you want, and as most kids are learning that's a lie, I was learning it was the truth.
Yeah, that's fucking
and
wrap your mind around that for a minute. That's crazy.
and then you kind of, and then to have, Hollywood is going to Hollywood almost just like dogs. Some dogs can smell cancer proteins, the Hollywood can smell the purity and sanctity of something, and if that gets too close to someone's ego preservation, it will be destroyed whether they're aware of it or not.
Exactly. Yes, and to put it in like a most objective way is that films are a group project, and if you ever worked on the bigger the group is,
Mhm.
the more of a giraffe you end up building, or like the more of a, what are they, like a camel, it's like a camel is a horse built by committee, and that's
Yeah,
that's what happens.
I went through that for sure. I had many scripts that were workshopped and critiqued, and I changed them and I changed them, and then the final rewrite was the same as the first draft.
Yeah.
This is
Except someone else is trying to change all the names of the characters to take credit for it. Like,
yeah. What was funny was with the Orson Welles script, there was even talk. Well, we might have to take out the Transformers, like what, replace them with GoBots.
so is that because there's this fear of the IP?
Yeah, but
Parody,
okay, so you are a human. Let's continue to tell your story as a human, but we're going to take out, your liver.
Right. Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tiptoe around it. You can cast the Transformers in the shadow, but and whatnot. But then, how can you develop a character like Unicron? What does Unicron think about Orson Welles? What does Unicron think about the fact that he is the progeny of an epochal genius, a once in a species mind that now has to eat planets and shit them out and sell toys.
Yeah.
As children of all ages perform air guitar in the theater.
Right. Yeah. And this is ostensibly so you can raise money to make your next film that in your mind is going to be something better than Citizen Kane. Like, was that what he was doing at that point, or was he just trying to survive? Because I know this being his last movie, I know he.
Well, what is survival to someone who is a compulsory artist? I'll tell you what was more important. And again, I'm always going to get Orson Welles wrong. There's nobody who gets him there. I don't want to disrespect the scholars like Jonathan Rosenbaum or Simon Callow or Catherine Benamou, the people who have put in the time. I am a fan. I am someone who is inspired. I do not know enough about Orson Welles to be able to definitively say anything, which is one more reason why having it told to a Transformer is a way for me to absolve myself of any accuracy. Because, I mean, this is ultimately being written as a father who is trying to reconnect to his daughter. Because the touchstone book I used was his daughter Christopher's In My Father's Shadow. That's where the true heart of the story is. Everything up to that was a documentary on Orson Welles that I was trying to dramatize, but I couldn't do that until I found the story of myself in there, which was being a father is more important than anything.
So is working with the Orson Welles, I guess it's not really IP, but is it any different trying to utilize his imagery than it is the Transformers? Or
again, I haven't actually experienced engagement with the outside world with this. I have been advised not to worry about it. My producer is very, very good with all that stuff.
Okay.
Like he's consulted with his entertainment attorney, and like, for instance, as long as we're not making money, and which I'm totally okay with, and which is why I'm so grateful to have raised what we have, like, we are okay to do this. Is no different than anything like Adi Shankar does in like the bootleg universe or whatever, in terms of like Orson Welles.
It's not that strange of it. Even like you think of things like Bruce Lee and the Quentin Tarantino movie and stuff like that. We don't have the blessing
of the Orson Welles estate, just like, that legal. I can't remember the name of it. There was a script on the blacklist by a manager's, I think, wife's, about Madonna. It was an unauthorized biopic. They didn't have the rights to it, but she could still write it. She could still profit off of it. It's not endorsed. And so I don't think this would.
And you'll never get the music rights.
No. So fortunately, like, Esso might make some music. We can get his rights.
Yes, and we got to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can go in multiple directions. And
before we get to Esso in a minute, I wonder. This made me think of something. Do you remember? I never saw this, but I kind of want to see it and kind of don't. I think it was maybe a Todd Haynes movie about Karen Carpenter that he made using Barbie dolls in the 90s, and in each consecutive, he kept shaving down the Barbie dolls because she died of anorexia. I'm a huge Carpenter's fan, and like he kept making them thinner and thinner in order to it was disturbing to watch. And it just reminds me of a similar type thing.
I never got into Haynes, but now I have to. My
I think
God,
it was him. It might have been a different Todd, but he was someone who this was in his wheelhouse. So it's like, I'll find it and send it to you because I've never seen it.
But he was also self-funded, right? He wasn't someone who
this was definitely on the cheap. This was something that he would have been Kickstartering if that was an option back in the 90s.
Yeah, so yeah, same with Orson.
But let's talk about Eso for a second, because I definitely don't want to miss this. So just for so let me just give a quick recap of Esoteric and what he means to me, and we'll get into that. So Esoteric, for those who don't know, is a rapper from the Boston area, Salem, Beverly area, in Massachusetts. He is part of 7L and Esoteric, which was sort of our local best kept hip hop secret for years, like just amazing boom bap hip hop. He got a chance to work with Inspector Deck pretty early in his career. I wouldn't say that I'm friends with him at all, but I'd say that we're friendly. Like whenever I see him, he knows who I am. I did a song with him and Cool Keith and Aztec, which is coming out next year. And he just has a reputation for being one of the most solid dudes out there in terms of hip hop. Like he's just a really great, it's like he's a family dude, just down to earth, very talented, smart. And now he's doing really well with Czarface, which is his group with 7L, his longtime producer, who's also one of the most underrated producers in hip hop. He should be, his range is crazy. And Inspector Deck from Wu-Tang Clan, who was one of the most underrated rappers in the Wu-Tang Clan and rap in general. So it's it's awesome to see this, like, it's almost like Run the Jewels level for New England in terms of seeing something you never thought would happen, and then seeing it get bigger and bigger, and just the art is amazing. And I'm probably gonna get a tattoo at some point, and it's just I have all my Czarface figures up there. I got my lunchbox right here.
I've got my Czarface figure that came with the shoes, the Zarkanis.
Yep.
Over there, leaning up against my nephew's bar mitzvah picture, and the joke is that he came in handy there in the horror, pushing everyone up in the chairs. And Eso has been just an absolute gentleman. Listen, I'm still kind of in shock that he even agreed to do anything for this.
Well, that's how I felt when he agreed to do a song with me. Of course, I paid him, so I don't want to make it free. But
so my background is, you know, I was exposed to Eso like so many people are with Be Alert.
Yeah, the Transformers.
So this was back when Napster was a thing, and I was burning mixtapes under the alias DJ Laptop from my private school.
I was DJ Timid. Your name was better.
I heard that, and I was immediately I didn't process it. I mean, I love hip hop, but I had no idea that those transformation noises could work on a beat. And so he never left my mind. And so he did all sorts of stuff. He had a bunch of projects, and was I think in search of Seamus Ryan, and
yes, that's one too that's a little lost now, because I think I pulled it out the other day because I had a flyer for it. My girlfriend's like, I've never heard of this before, because she's a fan too, and I'm like, it's only available in CD. It's a great project.
YouTube has helped with some of this. Like, for instance, I don't know if you knew that MF Doom produced a record that he doesn't have any verses on it, called Unicron, with the rapper Trunks as a favor.
I found that actually in my search, because I'm a huge Doom fan. I'm like, that's one of the Doom records I don't have.
Dude, who's not, man?
I know. I interviewed recently the guy who wrote the book on Mad Villainy.
I'm picking that up, and I'm actually giving it to one of my students that I still keep in touch with, who's a brilliant rapper, Luis. He is fantastic. And I was always, back when I was, before I had moved close to my daughter, I worked as a high school intensive reading teacher. And I was trying to make my way towards my daughter and writing at the same time. And, so teaching was what paid the bills. And Luis was not one of my students, but he was another teacher's student. And he didn't jive with a lot of the kids, understandably. And so he hung out with the teachers during lunch. And I got to talking with him, and I kind of took him under my wing, and I've just been so impressed by his growth as a lyricist and an MC, doing all sorts of odd jobs, moving to, I think, to Iowa at one point, I don't know, working a slaughterhouse or something, just like to try to keep it together, and seeing his rapping improve. And I've been like a reflection of working hard as well. Now he gets to see me, collaborating with Eso on something. It's just.
What's his rap name? Just to shout him out for people.
He's Villain or Vector, Vektor, I believe. I'll send it to you later. I have to actually. Yeah, oh my God, I'm very, very proud of him. And awesome. So going back to Eso,
yeah,
like the more once social media came around, and you know, my favorite people to follow, actually the only people that I can tolerate following business pages for on social media are artists, musicians.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone else is up their own ass, and I fucking hate it. And
Mhm.
Esso, you know, also had his personal account, Seamus Ryan, and I boldly added him back when, you know, adding people on Facebook was like experimenting with LSD. Like, oh,
Yes, it was like, I wonder if they'll say yes.
and he did, and then I got exposed to this gentleman, you know, a father with just absolutely just the most combative, compelling. I mean, he is definitely a top echelon MC. I
Oh
don't
God,
know
yeah.
where. I don't
I mean, I
even.
said 7L doesn't get the credit he deserved. Esoteric does not either. And at one point, Inspector Deck said something about how he thought Esoteric was at least as good as Eminem, and I'm
Eminem.
like, yeah, I
I
think he's
mean,
on. You know,
like even the name, you know, like esoteric is not not a word a lot of people know.
right?
You know, he is calling attention to the fact that his lexicon, his nomenclature, his cross reference is not going to be for everybody. So what a terrific person to be inspired by. And like I said, he was on, I think, what's it called, like white collar or blue collar rapper or working class rapper, that documentary about, you know, the
Yep.
rappers who are just getting by basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I sent that to my student as well, and just see every time I ran into him, he was a solid dude. And then I don't remember how I was exposed to Czarface, but it was like finding an entire like unopened box of 1953 Topps
Oh
baseball
man,
cards,
that's
man.
funny because I remember the day the tweet went out when he said, "What would people think of us possibly doing another song or I think or a mixtape with Inspector Deck?" And I'm like, "How many times can I like this?" And then it's like developed into Czarface over that year, and I was just like,
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And so, like, I had been following Eso and their journey, and you know, like, I remember when his father passed away, and the thing that
"Yes,
struck me, he wrote this incredible tribute to him, and I was so moved, because I believe my father had recently passed as well, and I told him, I said, I wrote him back, I said, if I was going to introduce your music to anybody, it would not be with a song, it would be with this, because you were such a pellucid, compelling, authentic storyteller. And even like his post about the, you know, the plane flight, like just
yes."
he is a storyteller. He is a generous, thoughtful human being, and I have seen that at every turn. And then when I reached out to him about this, I tried to be incredibly respectful and just, you know, basically didn't want to bother him. You know, I was expecting it would be one more email that just never was
What
replied
went to
to.
the ether? Yeah,
And not only has he replied, you know, he's asking about my daughter. He is genuinely engaged, and I'm nobody. Like
right.
he has no time to talk to me, and yet here he is, not only replying but engaging. And then when he sent me a sample of the song, knowing fully well that this is not something he can promote as Czarface because it's just him,
Right.
and still posting it on the Czarface account
I know.
on the stories, he does not need to do any of this.
You know what's funny too? Before I forget to go back to it, just to make a point, I don't want to make it about me at all, but to make a point about that article you're talking about his father. I read that too, and I was so moved that so I had told him I was going to do a drawing of him that was like half Inspected Deck and half Esso, and he's like, "Oh, I'll post it." But I pivoted and I drew that picture of him and his father that was from that, and I sent it to him, and I got an extremely nice response. But it's like that was just how powerful that was. As I read that, it changed my artistic plans and said I want to do something nice for this person because I felt everything he felt in that moment, and it was. I don't know if it's still floating out there, and it's probably not the top thing he wants promoted of everything he
Please
does.
send it my way. Please
Yeah,
send it my way.
if I find it, I'll yeah. But
Thank you. Yeah.
he's somebody who I've said this to other people before that, and I'll say it again. If there's somebody in the Boston hip hop scene who has a bad word to say about him, it tells me a lot more about the person saying it than it does about him. It's because it's like if I don't, you got to give me some real compelling evidence. And it's not like a lot of people that are, but it's like if everyone's like, "Oh, SO ain't shit," I'm like, "You ain't shit. Like you don't know. Like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about." Solid dude. I don't know him that well. I'll tell you that.
Right.
I'm not like
Yeah, I don't know. I know every time he engages,
but he
with
makes
me,
you feel like you do, which is something that's a really
and
special
that's
trait.
why I want this project to shoot to the fucking stratosphere. I want to validate his involvement. I want which is why I put first and foremost like the team that we had involved, because I did not want his seal of approval if I knew that this was not something that could go places.
Right.
And even if I never speak to him again, like the kindness that he has shown me, it silences you. Like you see all the negativity, or even worse, the slack-jawed indifference from the majority of the world.
Right. And hip hop too, even getting a rapper to write you back, even give you something you paid for. I mean, whatever. That's not for today, but amongst rappers, it's even more like doesn't happen.
No, I mean, talk about Citizen Kane, Citizen Ryan. I mean, what a guy. Like, and then
I'll simp for him all day. I don't care what people say.
For sure, man. And then I found out his dad's a teacher. I'm like, of course.
Yeah, he was an English teacher, I think. Yeah,
of course he's a fucking teacher, because I mean, Esso's a teacher. I mean, just
yes, yeah.
I could go on and on, and then
So let's talk about exactly how this happened, though. So like it's like, sure. And I don't want to give away all your details and all the conversation, whatever. But like, so you had this project, and you were like, how do you even think to reach out to him? Because it is a very when I saw that third piece fall together, Esoteric being involved, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. First of all, before I get into that, like my daughter's 16, and I realized that by me gushing about having Esso involved, it'd be like my parents in like 2003 gushing about having Devo involved.
Yeah, but if Devo was involved in my project, I'd be gushing about that now too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe it's flipped now. Maybe if I had Devo involved instead of Esso, my daughter would be like, "Oh shit!"
Walking around with a yellow hat on.
She's excited, and so like what happened was, I was originally going to sell my Transformers collection on Kickstarter as incentives, and we got all the way through. I'm sure you saw the video showing some of my toys. We got all the way through the end, and we didn't realize, like, oh my God, did anybody check to see that we can actually do this? And the answer is no resale allowed. So I wound up just like saying, okay, we have to figure out different ways to get people involved. What can we do? Holy shit. And so one thing,
you still have the option of selling your toys and putting it towards the money. You just can't do it in the Kickstarter format.
Right. And I think it loses some of its narrative thrust, because now you have to back channel and get people involved that way.
And you're also appealing to people who are real Transformers fans, because there's always people Googling, how can I get whatever Bumblebee?
Right. And so like if I could have put a huge part of my collection on Kickstarter, plus producer credit, plus everything else, I could have, ostensibly charged a lot more. But like the market's not great right now for it, anyways. But when we realized that, I'm like, oh shit. Well, we have to. I do not like taking people's money. I do not.
Same with me.
I do not want people to just give me something. I have to make it worth their while. And so the first thing that I did was, I'm like, all right, well, there's a scene in my script where Orson Welles has a Transformer toy of himself delivered by a Hasbro page to compel him to sign on. And so like there's a scene where 450-pound Orson Welles, sessile, immobile in a chair, like there's a page at the door that his housekeeper brings in, or is like standing outside in the rain. Orson has this gift basket with like flowers, like charcuterie, and then like a box, a cardboard box that he opens up, puts the script and the contract aside, the pictures of Unicron, and out he gets an Orson Welles Transformer, and it's done just like the box. And the Transformers toys have a little a phrase at the top, like transforms from semi truck to robot leader and back for like Optimus Prime or whatever. And for him, it was transforms from iconic film sled to genius auteur and back. And he takes the toy out, again, pages outside, rain gushing down. His dog right here, Kiki, these were production team shirts. The dog is barking. All of this chaos is going around. He's chewing on a cigar. You see this genius fumbling with this Transformer toy he takes out, and the arm breaks off. And that's so I decided, all right, well, we're gonna hire the best toy customizer I know to make these toys, and we're gonna give them away as incentives, and that will take the place. And then I thought, well, we need something else, and that's when I reached out to Esso, and I tried to be as transparent and respectful as I could. And
even try to cram this all to pitch this. This is a long pitch. Like in general, to really get where you're going for. It takes you a few paragraphs to really like. So it must be tough to word that email.
I fortunately had other things vouching for me. I had at the time the involvement of Open the Portal, Eric Calderon. I had a great blurb from Sue Armstrong, the producer of Good Will Hunting, and another Wells film, RKO 281, who described my script as a tour de force. I had what's called a blacklist review, blacklist.com, blcklst.com is a site run by Franklin Leonard, which acts as like a legitimizing pipeline for screenplays, and you get vetted, get reviewed.
Yep.
And
there's a podcast where they read some of those scripts, I believe, too. The Hollywood. I think there's a podcast where some of those scripts get read.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ear Movies, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something different now, but so that's the Orson Welles screenplay scored an 8 out of 10. The Clay Tommy script I told you about, the one that got me a manager, scored a 9 out of 10, as well as like several 10s out of 10s, but it also scored 1s and 2s from other reviews, which makes sense, of course.
Yeah.
And so I sent Eso this entire kind of promotional package, just be like, hey, we're not wasting your time. This is a serious project. I sent him the link to Open the Portal. I sent him the screenplay. I don't know what he specifically read. I sent him my involvement with Ron. Ron actually sent him a book. And I sent Eso, I sent it to 7L's record shop, actually.
What's it called? Vinyl Index? I think it's called Vinyl Index in some of there's 2 of them now. I think that might be it. I've been there a couple times.
It's something ''S. I can't remember now. Eso sent me the address, to ship it to him. I sent him that. I sent him the book, or Ron sent him the book, and I sent him a transformer voice synthesizer that you. It almost sounds like the device people with emphysema use. And I said, hey, one more tool for the lab for him. But so I sent him all this with no expectation, and he got back, said, he'd love to be involved. And then, like I made sure that it was worth his while. I paid him, and then it was good to go. I wouldn't expect, anybody of his stature to do anything unless they, were really on board with it, without compensation, and use just the way he's delivered, and not just, doing things that I couldn't have asked him to do from the promotions, or even the little clip I sent you, which is still not for public consumption, but it's really, really cool. And we debated like about what we wanted to do, and like what we wanted to charge, and like we thought like, well, I discussed with him, well, do we want to put out like a digital single that you pledge $5 and everybody gets, or do we want to make it more exclusive? And Esso's decision, and I think Eric's, and ultimately myself, was like, well, that Martin Shkreli bought Wu-Tang album, Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. Let's do something like that. And so now we have, I think, around 40 of these vinyls that I know you recently grabbed one of. Thank you very much.
This guy? I actually hope I might have to cut this out, but this guy, the author of this, is allegedly going to be on this podcast at some point. I've had a few conversations with him.
Got another 33 1/3 book?
No, this is one that he just wrote on his own about. He was involved in the process. It was him, RZA, and Silver Rings that did it. So he was the third guy in the process. This is being delayed a little bit by something else he's going on, but at some point, I believe he will be on the podcast.
Okay, another one to add to your list. Go Ahead in the Rain, about A Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, yeah. How about that Michael Rappaport documentary? That's pretty great, too.
Oh, okay, yeah. And if you can grab it, I've only seen clips, but Q-Tip did, and going back to Orson Welles, like one of the reasons I'm huge into hip hop and why I think Orson connected is Orson was a huge proponent of jazz.
Yes.
So Q-Tip did an entire class at NYU plotting the history of hip hop through the lens of jazz.
That must have been fascinating as hell.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. I remember when like Q-Tip got onto Twitter and like schooled Iggy Azalea on some history nuance, and just the knowledge. The thing I love as a wordsmith about hip hop is that the thing people see with hip hop first is kind of like the conservative viewpoint that these are just cretins,
right.
Savages, no different than the troglodytes throwing a bone into the sky in front of the monolith in
2001.
2001.
Yeah.
They see the rage and everything else. And first of all, how are you going to not have rage if that's been your experience? But just
if you're not angry, then you're not paying attention, really.
And it's just I love the fact that I can consider myself sesquipedalian or verbose, or just have an affinity for language, and call myself a hip hop fan, because if you dissect these lyrics, if you hear what these people are capable of, you will put them on par with any man of letters that grew up in an ivory tower.
Right, right.
No fucking doubt. No
Yeah,
fucking
it's true. The amount of stuff that goes over the average listener's head, like the amount of like metaphors that last multiple bars and that refer back to each other, and like some of them, to use the term, are some esoteric references. But like when you get them, like that's the beauty about hip hop that I tell people, is that you can't hear it all. If it's a good hip hop song, you cannot hear it all the first time. There are songs that I've been listening to for 30 years that I'm just now getting bars out of, and it's not that I'm stupid, but it's like that's just never.
Like, I just reread Slaughterhouse 5. And it's a completely different book than it was when I was 13.
I'm like that with Eyes Wide Shut. Every time I watch that movie, I feel
Like you have to grow into some of these metaphors for them to actually, viscerally connect to you.
The movie Kids is like, if you watch the movie Kids now versus that was a major influence on you. That is a movie that gets more disturbing in time, because like, oh my God, they were my peers and now they're children.
I was afraid to watch it. I think I might now, actually.
Have you seen it before or watch it again?
No, that's Harmony Korine, right?
Yeah.
I was afraid. He did Gummo too, I think.
I won't watch Gummo. I talked about this in a previous episode because of some of the stuff I've heard about it. I'm like, that is going to sit with me in a way that I can't.
I felt that way about Kids too. I will probably check it out. It's probably tempered down over time. I know you said it's probably just disturbing, but so is the world. So
right.
I mean,
and on the flip side, you're seeing two amazing performances in Chloe Sevigny and Rosario Dawson, for people who I think it was their first real roles, and they went on to being at least Academy Award nominees. I think Chloe won. I don't know if Rosario's gotten hers yet, but she fucking deserves it.
So. But like, for instance, my dad's scariest movie was The Exorcist. He said he slept with the lights on. I showed it to my daughter. She fell asleep.
I've actually never seen that. I should try to watch that. But
maybe that's a special effects thing or whatever. But anyways, like,
that's probably a good point. The spinning head probably doesn't do it like it used to. I mean, when I was a kid, though, when I saw Return to Oz, man, in the theater, that fucked me up for a long time. Those wheelers and stuff. I wasn't in Superman 3, when the woman gets sucked in the computer at the end of Superman 3. I still see that when I close my eyes.
Oh, jeez. Honestly, man, I'm sure I have one that's analogous. I'm just like so tired. I'm surprised I've been able to produce, this much credit to you for getting it out of me. I've averaged like midnight to 4 a.m. this past month for my sleep schedule. Man.
We won't keep you much longer, though.
No.
I can talk to you before. I want to talk a little bit more on the ESO thing. So, like so on the specifics of what it is. This might be my own curiosity. So. He's agreed to do. So you have an album, a vinyl that you're pressing up. You're doing 40 copies of it.
Yeah.
An EP. Yep. Okay. Is this all already been recorded, or is it stuff he's still working
on?
No,
he's in his words, he said, I'm just having fun. And so what I did was I sent him like some materials. I sent him a lot of the archival animation cell copies, and I sent him Ron's book, a lot of stuff, just because I feel like Eso is like a supercomputer. You just feed him, and he will come out with things. And
he's got a wall like I have behind me, I'm sure, somewhere in his house too. He's an old school fan of all this same, like, toys.
He actually told me about a really cool possible that I'm not sure I can talk about. So as far as I know, it may not even exist. It may have just been a thing. Yeah. In fact, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'll tell you what, though. I won't say what it is. I ran into him at a small Comic-Con, and he told me about something that he told me not to tell anybody about, and I didn't. And I waited 3 years, and it finally happened. And I was like, if this happens, it's going to be insane. And then it came out, and I was like, I told him, like, I didn't tell anyone. Like, hey, that's awesome, man. I'm so happy.
He deserves everything, man. Like, it's just been I love freaking Tom Hardy, man. Like,
I wanted to. All right, so did he? Do you know how did he rap on those songs? Because that dude,
Facebook,
Okay, that dude. We follow each other on Instagram, and a few weeks ago,
dude, you're better off than I am, because he won't accept my request. So
Facebook,
I'm Redman. I can't get into the club.
I messaged him. I was like, I'm like, they've denied this is Tom Hardy. I'm like, maybe it isn't, maybe it is, but they haven't said it. So what if the guy responds and maybe he'll do a verse? I was a long shot, but I've got no response.
And what did you find out?
Nothing, because it's like, for all I know, if it's Tom Hardy, this could be Eso running the page. I have no idea.
Right.
I love the mystery of it, because
they're obviously kindred. I think Eso got Eso got on the soundtrack for Venom
Yep.
because of Tom Hardy, and huge people repping.
Yeah, he has a line where he goes, I'm menacing and I'm menacing like Ben Mendelsohn and everything. And then there's a video of Ben Mendelsohn in his car listening to it.
Oh my God. My favorite today's special, take a deep breath and inhale death, face puller. That's like that's one of my Spotify repeat, like to kind of deal with this all happening. Like I take walks every night. It's too hot during the day, but like where I live in north of Orlando, there's a beautiful lake, and I'll just be having these songs on repeat. That Zara Raffaele, Nightcrawler.
Yeah, Nightcrawler, I believe that might be. I know it's easy to say because Method Man's on it, but it might be my favorite. Like that song crushes. Yeah. You know what rhyme? Like I saw him recently. He played with Lord Finessa's show like down the street from me like last year.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, man, Murder, Death, Kill. And I think he must know it too, because he always pulls that one out of all the old stuff. His verse on Murder, Death, Kill is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I be heading your heroes, better get ready for Eddie Guerrero. Theoretically, your chance of dead and me zero. That your chance of petty to me. Jack the Iron, bite the Iron Man like he jacked those balls of death connected like money straight off the press. I hope he's not watching.
Oh,
I was just that makes me sweat just hearing that verse. That's one of my favorite verses of all time.
Rap. Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. You have this kind of bimodality with this music. You have rap as the story, and the lyrics as the story, and the lyrics as the instrument.
Yes, yeah, that's something I've learned a lot as I've gotten as a rapper.
Just the sonorous kind of concatenation of one verse to the next is a type of instrument, and then if you give it semanticity on top, you are creating literature. You are creating literature. That's no different than iambic pentameter. That's no different than any of the literary techniques, structured around fluency and pausing and instrumentation and
especially because in hip hop, a lot of times you're trying to hit the vowel sound on the downbeat, which is sort of iambic pentameter, or something similar to that. At least that's the concept.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. And so, like, I think ultimately the culmination of this project with Eso, as I envision, and ultimately it's going to be what he wants it to be. Like, and that's the most exciting to me is that.
And you hire a guy like him because no matter what he's going to do, it's going to be great. So you can trust it's going to be great.
Right. And so I think he's going to put out a couple Transformers theme songs. Obviously, nothing with copyrighted material because when you get into music, that's iffy. Like, I'm not sure. I think he told me that like he's not sure that if Be Alert came out under Czarface, whether it would have flown.
Right. Because, things were much different back then.
Yeah. But
and I'm sure that song overperformed his expectations back at the time because that was the first song that got him on the radar. So he was only a few years away from being a Salem.
What's crazy is
DJ
like I grew up with him as a kid. I grew up with him as a kid, thinking that he was like in his 20s. He's only a few years older than I am, man.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's a couple years older than me.
It's like wow, he is precocious as fuck, and that's just another. That's like Orson Welles. These guys were, and he's a producer too.
Yeah, and I don't know if Esso's ever really had a day job. I think he's been doing this because he probably has, but it's like it feels like he's been doing this as his career most of his life. It wasn't like
I mean that's awesome, but obviously he doesn't carry himself like someone who's never had to have a real job.
Oh God, no.
He is as blue collar as they come, and it's just like a pleasure. So I think ultimately, so like for our campaign, I think we're gonna have around like 40 vinyls that no one else will get. And to be honest with you, I'm a little surprised that not more people have jumped on it. Maybe I priced it too high. I get it, but like in general, there's been a lot of kind of apprehension about donating. Although at the end, like I know there's some people coming in, like we just like the way that we got across the finish line is someone dropped $5,000 to be a producer. Nice. And so they get the toy, they get the record, they get a bunch of stuff. They get a consultation with Eric and myself on a screenplay. They can call us at all hours of the night asking which toenail polish they should try, everything. And so that's really exciting. I don't think
I use Rainforest Blue in case anybody's wondering.
Okay. I think if I could have done it differently, I would have priced it a little more cheaply because I do want people to be able to access this. But I just see, so many like this project needs to be funded. Like the 36,000 that we put as the minimum, that's to get a graphic novel. That's not to get a stop motion film.
And so it's expensive to make graphic novels. Printing out the paper is expensive. It's
printing
hard.
out the paper. You have to have an artist. You have to have a letterer. You have to. I mean, this is
someone who can handle the layouts.
Even before you have a distributor. And so, and also from that 36K, there's Kickstarter fees, their fulfillment fees, their shipping fees. It's a clusterfuck. And
Yeah, so
so
actually, that was something I wanted. Sorry to interrupt, but like when you're raising that money, how much of that, and if you don't feel comfortable saying that, you don't have to. How much of that goes to just purchasing the things that you're giving away? How much of it actually goes to the film?
yeah, you're supposed to take the money out of that. You don't fulfill until it's funded. Obviously, we're not going to buy stuff, you know, if the project's not funded.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And so a huge percentage. So you're like you're trying to eyeball, back of the napkin, costs and everything. And Eric is really good about that. Eric has all these tie-ins to producers, distributors, whatever. Like he is the guy for this. Thank goodness, because my business acumen is right up there with my hairline. It's not existing.
Same. Yeah.
So
we both got hats on today.
And so he's headlining that. And the one thing I took out money to pay Esso, because I said, no matter what, this is a defining moment in my life to have his involvement. Whether we have a movie or not, we were going to have this. And so
that's how I felt when I paid him to be on my song.
Yeah. Like, honestly, like the one.
At least if there's nothing else, at least there'll always be this.
Right. Even the little bit he sent me, like, I had to put it on my own private YouTube so that I could loop it. Like, if you have YouTube Premium, you can loop songs. You can minimize the app, and it's like the best thing since
YouTube Premium is the best money in streaming. As far as I'm concerned.
You know what? They've got people in the Hitman Harp sharpshooter when it comes to commercials now, man. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. And yeah, so I can't wait to see what that's going to look like. And I think the EP, I think the vinyl is going to have a mock-up of our maquette, the Orson Welles puppet that we have everywhere. Funny side story, right as it was getting funded, Open the Portal, the studio where we did this, that has the maquette, they were hosting a concert where Weird Al was a special guest. Weird Al did a song, Dare to Be Stupid, on the Transformers original show, our original movie, which
really?
You might have. Yeah. If you go back when they go on the junk planet.
I heard the song. I didn't realize that was Weird Al, because I remember thinking because I had the subtitles on too, and it was really.
So there's a chance now that Weird Al might have seen this. I tagged him in the post that we got funded. I saw that he viewed the story.
He's one of those dudes that I think is pretty accessible. I think you can get something in front of this.
Side story, like there again, like when I was in grad school, my professor Tom Mankiewicz, I used to go up to his house in Hollywood Hills, and he had his monogrammed robe on. His legs would be splayed, like underwear on, thankfully. But like I don't even remember. I was too nervous about the script to notice. Maybe in my mind it was pixelated out, no matter what. He said that Weird Al was his neighbor, and that Weird Al would send Christmas cards of forced perspective, where it made it look like his family was under the tree and his giant poodle was in the foreground, and it looked like the dog was balancing the family on his nose.
Oh my god,
that was what he said. Weird Al.
He's the best. Christmas.
Yeah. No.
Have you seen the movie with Daniel Radcliffe playing Weird Al?
I can't wait.
It's out. It's out. It's on Roku for free.
Oh, Roku. I knew it was one of the non-standard ones.
Yeah. You can just dig out and watch it for free. It's so good. I couldn't believe it was just put out there for free.
Daniel Radcliffe's amazing. Honestly, Daniel Radcliffe was my dream casting for Clay Tommy. Like,
that's cool.
A little bit older. Like Swiss Army Man is another.
I've never seen that, but I've heard.
And who's probably my favorite actor working right now is Dave Bautista.
He's damn good, man. He is. I'll tell you, man. I was a big wrestling. I didn't even like him as a wrestler back in the day, and I never would have pegged him for being that. But he's a damn good wrestler, and he's a damn good actor.
He has had a textured life that merits dramatization and introspection, and he's someone who can go places a lot of other people probably can't.
Right.
For a variety of reasons.
Force of will is a lot of it. Like he willed his way to where he is.
Totally. It's like the scars radiate like a halo around him.
Yes. Yeah.
And that adds to his bulk.
Yeah.
And he is somebody, when I saw him, even in his small role in Blade Runner.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I gotta watch that.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No.
He in a small role in Blade Runner, he just takes you there, and just much like Inspector Deck is the leadoff man in so many songs, like to have our exposure to him be the first kind of line of dramatic involvement was huge. And so, like I told you, Michael Clark Duncan was considering the role play Tommy. He would have played an art dealer. I describe him as a man with the prison muscle of 7 prisoners, whose easy smile and stature can hug not just any man but his entire universe.
That sounds written for Michael Clark Duncan.
Yeah, so I would love Dave Bautista to get this script, and so
Yeah.
again,
he's got the for someone of his size and stature, his ability to carry things emotionally is pretty impressive.
Right. I'm not his height, but like I used to get like steroid jokes. I was like a power lifter, grunt type, and people don't do well with complexity,
Yes.
with oppositional.
They want things white or black, one or zero.
Right. Forces, entering their sensory perception, and so seeing someone succeed dramatically like this, or another great example is Oliver Sacks, the famous neuroscientist who, he wrote a lot of books. He's like the Carl Sagan of psychology. Yep. He used to squat over 600. And he's just a powerhouse. People don't do well with that.
Even like Schwarzenegger and like Dolph Lundgren, those are foreign-born guys, and that were really smart. Like totally. It was like and there was no stereotype over there. Right. It's so the same thing that made you good at one could make you good at the other. And for some reason in this country, we don't get that as much.
How many powerfully built people get to a place of financial and creative freedom where they have like one of the things I've always thought about, take someone like Brad Pitt, obviously a smart, pragmatic guy, but then again, there are lots of, now you give him or Leonardo DiCaprio the access to a continual titration, a continual IV of the best artistic material on the planet all the time. You're going to become like a Super Saiyan culturally and academically, and you will begin to think differently, or you will use whatever resources you have to maximize your potential to see the human condition. And so when I see something like Dave Bautista or Schwarzenegger, I have to watch his new documentary. Seeing these people and what they can do is absolutely empowering. And I hope that Dave will continue to take artistic roles, because it could be part of what keeps art film going.
Yeah. I guess he wants to be Bane in the new, because there's a good chance he'll end up somewhere in the DC universe because of his close relationship with, because he's really tied with him and James Gunn. I think have a really good relationship. Now James Gunn's running DC. And I think there was talk that he wanted to play Bane, but I think they were saying they wanted to go younger. But I'm betting he's going to pop up somewhere in James Gunn's DC
aside, the guy who 3D printed all of the props and characters for Guardians of the Galaxy is the one who printed the Orson Welles.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a small world. That's it's amazing the people that this is something something I want to mention too, to make a point of, because this has come up a little bit, we haven't directly addressed it, is that once you kind of if you're a creative person like me and like yourself, once you start actually making a few inroads, you kind of realize how small the world is. Like, it may sound like a tremendously big coincidence that a Transformers fan would end up in this screenwriting class written by the Transformers, or whoever class written by the Transformers.
Oh, that's a good point.
The world is small, and it's like, that's actually, once you take those steps forward, those sort of connections happen more often.
It seems like there's a correlation between the boldness and fortuitousness, because I think the main ingredient is decency. If you have the talent, if you have the talent, the decency will be the thing that people remember. I think
exactly.
At least it allows me to live with myself. I've met a lot of indecent people, a lot of disordered people who have unfortunately wasted a lot of energy on.
Yeah.
But
think of someone like Keanu Reeves, who for years people said was a shitty actor, but he was a wicked nice guy, and he kept getting roles probably because people liked working with him, and now he's a damn good actor. And it's like, that's what being decent can help get you. Like, and it's no one has a bad word to say about him as a human being, and that's probably like, he knew it wasn't going to show up like fucked up like a lot of people will. It's like, that helps a lot.
Right. Absolutely. And so if you have a demonstrable work ethic and humanity ethic that people have experienced, and you're not a headache, you do more and more and more, and you stay who you are. Like I've always been who I am. I just was nobody, and I'm still nobody. But I had I've had these two small connections, and I've been the same person these connections to this industry that I was to everybody else. And
Yep.
I don't know how to be any differently. And so my hope is that I am an easy person to work with. I am a kind person. And like you said, it is a small town, and so those things get remembered. I think, and I have noticed that I'm not a part of the inner circle of like executives and producers. I will say though that the animation world, because they're treated like shit relative to live action, they are kind and supportive and tribal in the most positive connotation. Like they want everybody to succeed, and so
Animation's hard. It's like you gotta, if anyone who's ever spent a lot of time working in animation, I believe you have to have a sort of respect for anybody else who does it, because it's a labor of love, lonely love.
And it is something that I hope is bringing a renaissance of seriousness to it. I don't know if you've seen, when anyone says that animation is for kids, you direct them to the con-winning Fantastic Planet. Fantastic Planet. There's an entire playlist of rappers who have taken the Fantastic Planet sound bites and turned them and sampled them.
Yeah.
Doom being one of them, I believe. And, Big Pun and many others. And so I'm actually beholden to animation, and it's what I hope to continue doing. I've worked on a couple other projects since this, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm not expecting a payday from this, but I am looking forward to I'm just
open some doors.
Huh?
That's sort of my attitude too. Is I'm like, it's like if I do this and what I'm doing, people like it, it'll open up more interesting conversations. It's like, and eventually, it keeps opening doors and conversations.
And you get to meet the people who are more like you, and you get to do it in a way where you reek of less desperation because you've achieved more, and therefore you can be more of who you actually are.
Right. Even like you and I, like I never would have met you if we never had
this is amazing,
our own
journeys.
Like,
I'm honored you wanted to speak to me, man. I saw your awesome, dude, and you keep going, and I mean, and if there's anyone that you want me to connect you to, like if you don't use LinkedIn, but I would totally endorse you for this, man.
I appreciate it. Same with you. Yeah, I mean, it's just. Let's talk a little bit about let's talk about a little bit of timeline, because I know we're going a little long here and I want to get some sleep. But I think you said that the goal was to have this stuff delivered by December 2024-ish. I know that stuff's tough.
The rewards, you mean?
The what? I think so. And maybe you should speak that better than me, because I saw that date and it stuck in my head.
Yeah, we'll probably have a lot of it done before then, but we don't want to you want to
under-promise and over-deliver.
Under-promise and over-deliver. Correct. And so I'm in touch with a couple of the toy makers, and they're working hard. They're both in the UK, and they're two toys. There's one that's hand casted that you've seen that has Orson's face on it, and then there's one that's going to be hand painted. And I think there are 10 of the hand painted ones, and then there's 5 of the hand casted ones. And so as soon as this campaign is over, I have to even figure out the language of fulfillment and how to go about that. Is that something Eric wants to handle?
Right.
Is that something, all the boxes I've been collecting in my closet from Amazon will take me to where I need to go?
I deal with that stuff all the time.
I'm grateful that it's just so awesome to see how many people have bought the graphic novel. Like I think it's over 50 people. And I think we're right at 100 backers now, which I don't know if that's good or not, but to me it's pretty exciting. It shows that this isn't mass delusion,
Oh yeah. And I think that's the funny thing too, when you mentioned this sort of about Esoteric and the way you approached him, is that like once you start peeling the onion on what you're trying to do, like for me it's like I read one thing, and every sentence I read about what you're trying to do made me want to read the next sentence, and there kept being, and it led me down to this wormhole of watching stuff about Orson Welles and Transformers and getting more and more excited about this. And it's just like you've done a really good job at presenting something that is a sort of a complicated concept, something it's not elevator pitch friendly, I would say.
Well, that's all Eric. All the copy on the all the storytelling on the Kickstarter page where he goes into, through the lens of the Transformers, the judgmental doc, that was all Eric. I had a huge dissertation on there. Like I did a lecture, I'm not the most brief when it comes to this topic. I'm not the most brief when it comes to any topic. And Eric absolutely nailed it. And it's one more reason why he's absolutely indispensable.
Yeah. Well, so what do you think of these Transformers movies? Because I know you've asked me before. I've only seen one of them. It's funny you mentioned the AFI list, so I'll pass it quickly. Have you ever heard of the podcast called How Did This Get Made?
No,
Okay, it's
but
done. It's done by June Diane Raphael, Paul Scheer, and Jason Mantzoukas, who are comedians,
okay.
and they watch a bad movie and then they talk about it. And it's one of my favorite podcasts. They've done over 300 episodes. I've watched all but 3 of those movies. That was my thing over the pandemic. I'm going to watch all of these. And the only one I ever Transformers movie I ever saw was because of that. And it was the
Okay.
second Transformers movie, and that movie is friggin' ludicrous. And I saw
Um,
Bumblebee with the sound off on a plane.
to be honest, they all look like the characters from District 9. They all
Yeah.
look. I mean,
It's a big noisy mess.
That's
It's
not
just
Transformers to me.
I don't
So
even
I
know
was
what
gonna
I'm
ask
looking
you,
at.
the '86 movie you saw, that was the only one that actually treated the Transformers like characters. It humanized them. It gave them character development. The other ones are about Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox, and in between,
Yeah.
cleavage
Shia LaBeouf
shots.
not be able to say I love you for some odd reason to
Right, right,
Megan
right, right,
Fox.
right, right.
Like,
And then you have these things that resemble arthropods that ingested copper or something. I
yeah.
don't know.
It has
And
all the same problem as the Godzilla movies that aren't about Godzilla. You're just like, okay, Matthew Broderick and Jean Reno
if
and like
you can't humanize these toys, then you're just creating setting.
right, right.
And
And
that's why
I came out of that Transformers movie going, I think I want a Grimlock tattoo. Because for some reason I was like Googling the Grimlock kicks ass. I was like, Starscream's a dick, Grimlock kicks ass.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm betting the Dinobots are probably not the most popular.
There's actually
Transformers.
a line in my script where you're talking about the '86 movie, obviously.
Yeah.
He says, "Me Grimlock say you die soon, Orson Welles. You look like shit."
God.
I had to be liberal with that, but yeah,
That's funny.
It's iconic. Grimlock is absolutely amazing. Greg Berger is a fantastic. I was actually thinking, should I pay for a cameo from Greg Berger just to graft it into this when we make it instead
So
of
he's the
like,
voice actor of Grimlock.
he has this one line. Do we bring him out to do audio, or do I just pay for a cameo?
What a hell of a gig it is to get to be like a voice actor too. It's like if there is a gig that is the sweetest gig to have in entertainment. If
I'm
you can do
curious
it.
about no, it's amazing. Although AI creates some complications, I'm really curious to hear what you think of the latest promo Eric did. It's on my Instagram page. It's with Andy is the guy in the black and white film with the glasses, kind of looks like Walt Disney.
Mm-hmm.
He goes by Wit in the movie or in the little promo. There's a Unicron voiceover that sounds like Unicron with the Orson Welles maquette. That's done by Jason Marnocha, who is an incredibly accomplished voice actor. Eric knows him from having directed him for voice on the Transformers cartoons, where he voiced, I believe, Megatron and Galvatron. He has this deep. I think Frank Tadaro, who voices Starscream, described it as bowel shaking rumble. And yeah, these voice actors, I'd never heard him sound like that. He freaking nailed Unicron. And so obviously now he's in contention for like when this goes, do we get to cast him? Would we have that honor? Yeah. And so these are not questions that I have the privilege or the authority to make decisions on. But you
might have a wish list of 10 of those things, and you might get to do 2 or 3 of them. Is that the way I run into stuff like that?
The fact that we're here at all is surreal, man. Like, do you know, like I thought once we got here that like I'd be happy, excited, but you have so many years of like rejection and everything.
Yeah.
It's just kind of derealizing, and you're just kind of static for a while. I don't know when it'll hit me. It'll hit me.
I feel the same way. It's like I have this way that when I accomplish something where I've worked really hard towards, something artistic, for a day or two after, I kind of feel nothing. And I'm just I'm just like, what's next? Like I did this, but now something has to be next. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Is this all going to fall apart? And then you just got to pick it up and go back. Go back up.
I've noticed, and maybe this is a little macabre, I've noticed that the more success I have, the more I think about mortality.
Yeah, because the older you get, you're like, I want more years to do this stuff that I now think is
for
good.
me, it's always you were distracted by mortality because you still hadn't done this thing. And so once you do this thing, all that's left is the void. And so, now what? Now do you go to that doctor's appointment you've been putting off? Now do you do this? Now do you do that?
That's kind of a Clerks 3 Kevin Smith type mentality. I felt deep into that. I totally feel you.
Kevin Smith is a freaking dude, man.
I wouldn't be here today. But Clerks, to me, Clerks, Kids, and Reservoir Dogs, and I'd say especially in that order, probably Clerks, Kids, Reservoir Dogs. Clerks changed my life. Clerks was the thing that told me that even if you have a you can do it. You can do something. You can have a finished product. And just the way he's taken his career. And one thing I take that I love that he says is that like he doesn't talk bad about things. He's like, there are movies I see that I hate. I just don't talk about them. I talk about the good.
Or like, yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson, who you know is an icon for me. You know, there will
Magnolia,
be blood.
Boogie Nights.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, why are you going to talk shit about these? You know, just say they're not for you, because
Right.
most people have no idea the earth that needs to be moved to get anything made.
Oh God, it's especially something good. It's damn near impossible to get a film made.
It's like
It's
the
a
fact that it's
miracle
good,
any movie gets made, let alone a
the
good one.
fact that something is good is merely a
An
cosmic
accident.
side effect
Yeah.
of entropy not working.
Right. It's chaos theory,
You
essentially landing on the
know,
right side
like
sometimes.
a vending machine that went haywire and didn't give you the pink starburst this time.
Right. And especially no pink starbursts are the best ones, 100%.
Oh shit! Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, you
Insert
don't like them?
request.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it is funny. It's the funny thing too. You got to think in Hollywood, the goal most of the time is not to. Of course, no one wants to make a bad movie, but in terms of priorities, making a good movie is not the top goal. The top goal is making money.
You know that rock vehicle. I think San Andreas. You know, it's just kind of like a paint by numbers. Thriller.
Yeah,
You
could have
know,
been Skyscraper 2. It could.
Roland Emmerich type.
Yep.
Screenplay is art, man. The original.
That's something people don't realize. That there are a lot of screenplays that are just
images that they've seen 1,000 times are painterly when they're read.
Yeah.
And these people don't get the fucking time of day.
And a lot of times they don't get the money, they don't get the credit because somebody else took their good idea, turned it into shit, and then got credit for it. And because they didn't win an arbitration, they lose everything.
You know, don't you hate when you see something that's really true, but you hate to admit it, and you want to then deflect the hatred onto the person who forced you to read it. So in my case, L'Amour Supreme, he had a quote on one of his stories. Of course, he
does the art for Czarface.
The genius, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Said, you know, I grieve all the artists whose work will never be seen because of the algorithm.
Yeah,
I'm like, damn, I don't have time for that. That's too deep.
It is.
Man. You know, that's like Richard Dawkins saying, you know, fuck all the people who grieving all the people who died. What about all the ones who never were?
Yeah.
You know, it's just.
But then I hear someone like Tyler Creator say, "I found this guy on YouTube who had 6 views, and then I made a career out of him." So it's like, as with everything, there's stuff on both ends to give you hope and despair.
They're saying to call Eric Tyler from now on. Gotcha. Tyler Creator's, yes, man. What a wow.
I knew who he was, but I didn't know his stuff until I did an episode about him a while back, and I got deep into him, and he's amazing, just flat out amazing.
There are, a lot too. So what else you got going on today? Like, what's your day to day like?
This is actually my only so I'm in the middle of right now working on a couple of EPs. I'm working on I'm doing an EP that I'm doing with some different artists like Elza. If you don't know Elza from Slum Village, he's an amazing rapper, one of my favorite of all time. Percy P, Copyright, who Esoteric fans I'm sure know who Copyright is. And I'm I'm kind of waiting on verses from some of those guys, and then that's coming together later this year. I'm doing 2 EPs, and I'm working with a music coach, a friend of mine from a previous episode, Rick Sehum, who I hadn't talked to in years. He's a music teacher, and he's a choir director, and he's really helping me break down how my rhyme flow to improve it way and beyond that. So he's almost like giving me some classes to some degree. He's sending me like these recordings, and he's like really helping me from a different perspective. So I'm working on this one song where I'm just trying to get, it's the first song in one of the EPs, and if I get it right, it's going to be amazing. If I get it a little off, it's going to bother me forever. So today I'm working on figuring out exactly which words I want to hit the drum beats, and probably re-recording it.
So it's like almost like a batting coach.
Exactly.
Okay. Because I've heard of like vocal coaches, but like for hip hop, that's so interesting, man.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to learn more.
I got lucky. That's the great thing about like this the podcast in general, is that like I'm somebody, I live kind of in the middle of nowhere. I'm not a huge social butterfly. I'd rather be inside working, but I'm finally connecting with people that like that get me, that are sort of more like me, and that these sort of ideas are flowing, and I'm doing all these new things. It's been amazing. It's like a whole community is developing around it.
Dude, so. I mean, I love your art. I've seen it. I know I've been so glazed over by social media, but I've been sure to like and to share what I can. And just looking at your office there, man, just
I appreciate it, man.
dude, keep going with this.
Send me your address. I'll send you a Soma 79 welcome pack.
Hey, yeah, it'll come from the return address where I send you your vinyl. And you know what I'm gonna actually try to do? Because I think I'll have them. I'm gonna give you one to play and one to display.
Dude, that'd make my life, man.
Yeah,
That
and then
dude.
I also want to send you, and this is not for public consumption. I will send you, any cutting room floor stuff that SO sends me just for you.
I cutting this
Uh,
out already. Dude, I mean, I appreciate it. That makes
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Just please remind me because I'm gonna. You ever walk in front of a squirrel and instead of like the squirrel going one way, it just zigzags, vacillates back and
Yeah.
forth until it corkscrews up a tree.
They give me these pills to help with that, and it works some days better than ever.
Got you, man.
But
Okay,
it's like
yeah.
so before we wrap up, so I know it's far down the road. What what are your aspirations beyond this, or is it too easy early to think about it?
Really interesting point. I if this wasn't going anywhere, I probably would have been teaching and then veering back towards medical school because one of my goals has always been one of the things I've learned in film school is just how storytelling impacts our physical health. Basically, the story we tell about ourselves to ourselves all the time can literally change the pro-inflammatory chemistry that we
So
have as a
Bruce
brain.
Lee said, "Never speak negative about yourself, even in
Yeah.
jest."
Well,
And I
just
literally wrote a text this morning that I rewrote, or my post on Instagram this morning I rewrote because of that Bruce Lee quote.
absolutely, absolutely, and so it has not just like I used to get gout attacks. Like I
Oh,
used to get them
painful as
when I was
hell.
like,
My grandfather had
yeah,
that.
yeah, and like this is when I was like bodybuilding and like had a six pack, and so it was like for me it was like genetic. But one of the things that I noticed was like when I would have a flare, a lot of the times it wasn't dietarily triggered; it would be from stress. And so like it's
Stress
not
is a
enough to
bitch.
say that things are stress. It's like I want to go. I actually am considering returning to med school or going to med school. I want to study like basically the narrative impact of on our immune chemistry. And basically, there's an entire field called narrative medicine, which is basically how we can improve efficacy rates and recovery rates in people just based on how much we let them express ourselves and they feel listened to. And I am just really curious about, just how much more there is to a lot of different diseases. I'm not going to obviously like I'm not going to say, oh, cancer, like go on a personal journey and you'll heal yourself. That's insulting, but like just that stuff's always interested me. And so like if the screenwriting thing, if either it's exhausted for me or it doesn't go anywhere, then or even if it does, I want to kind of pursue that nexus point that negotiates, what we tell ourselves, how we live our lives, and then what we in turn physically experience that we usually rely on a doctor for. And like, can we find nuance molecularly there because of storytelling? And that sounds a little hokum right now, but
No, but it
more,
sounds it sounds to me like you have similar goals to me, which is you don't know exactly what they are, but you know what you want them to feel like.
right. So in terms of the screenwriting, like I think I have like a couple stories right now. The Orson Welles one being one, the Clay Tommy one being. I'm not someone who puts out five specs every 2 years. Like I have the stories that are important to me. I'm not
The
someone who
script is a
will.
huge commitment. I've only written one script in the past decade. It's a big
Well,
commitment.
for me, they just they take longer.
Yep.
I put a little more thought. Like for instance, another one that I had while I was waiting on this is called Pugilistica. It's about a boxer or a writer who is so afraid of rejection that he takes up boxing so that he can physically have the ability to write beaten out of him, so he doesn't have to face that. And then
That's a fucking shit, man.
and then in the process, that rage goes in the other direction, and he actually paralyzes another opponent, and then basically he then goes on to do the thing that he said he would do to himself. He beats it out of him almost to the point where they wind up in the same nursing home years later. This guy, paraplegic, and then him with dementia pugilistica is what it's called, just like the concussion syndromes and
Yeah, CTE.
basically as a way mea culpa encounters this guy he paralyzed many years ago who wants to basically going to collaborate with him on a memoir about the boxer he paralyzed and
Yeah, I just
using his. Go ahead.
I just got a picture of myself watching you say that, and I was like, that dude is so into what that dude said because I was so engrossed into that. I could see myself being it. That sounds
Yeah, man. Well, I'm
you
gonna work with.
understand the human condition, man. That it's like you seem to have a level of self-awareness and understanding of the human condition that is one of the most valuable traits you can have in life. And I'm glad to see you got that shit, man.
I appreciate it, dude. Obviously, it doesn't come from a scot-free life, and
Yes.
I'm very grateful that I am sincere and curious about everything that happens to me, and thank you so much for saying that. I don't hear much of that, and so we'll see what happens. I met, one of the things I did, I actually sold my car. One of the really stressful side effects of COVID was I developed really bad driving anxiety, and so to get closer to my daughter, because rent is insane down here now, like
Yeah.
I actually just sold my car, and like I walk or Uber everywhere, and one of the cool side effects of that is you get to really engage people and learn, keep your social skills up to date. And I get to show my, telegraph that, demonstrated to my daughter. And one of the people I
Yeah.
met was a PhD in Caribbean studies, and we're actually, when this is done, we had started on a poem about a creation myth of the first mixed race human being, about a Norwegian fisherman who comes to Haiti and meets a local woman, and they have a child named Yelida together, and it's basically becomes a supernatural custody battle where the Norwegian gods come down to Haiti to basically fight the voodoo gods for the purity of the blood, to get the white blood back, basically. And it's an allegory of racism, and really, really cool poem. And I met that guy, who was my Uber driver. And so once
I
this
love
is all
shit like
done,
that.
I'm going to dive into that again because I owe him. I have about 20 pages, but this is obviously taking precedence. This is the longest I've gone without writing because this has been so all encompassing and so
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah. It's
So
funny. Somebody, you saying a minute ago. We can wrap this up in a second. I've been saying that, but the thing about how stress and impacts your health, I have a story about that if you care to hear it. So
sure,
this is sort of
absolutely.
how I ended up where I was. So I worked at a company for 18 years. I was an IT media company, one of the bigger ones out there, and
Mhm.
I was the top. I was a database director. I was a
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty high up.
yeah, and so I started. So I had been engaged to somebody for years, living with them, had a great condo, and all of a sudden they noticed that I was doing this like all the time. Like, and they're like, "Why do you do that?" And I'm like, "Oh, you can see that? I thought that was only in my head." So that I started trying to suppress it, and then I started biting my tongue, and that like to kind of nibbling the end, and then I started doing it more and more and more, and then it started bleeding, and I was just like, I am a step away from basically cutting myself, and
Mhm.
I was in a position at my company. I don't want to say too much as a public, but like I was feeling a level of stress that I thought was not fair. I would say that, or not healthy, I think is the way I'd probably put it. We'll debate fairness another day, but it was not healthy. And I was at a friend's bachelor party. I had something happened in my job where something got messed up, and I was supposed to leave that day for a friend's bachelor party. And it wasn't really my fault, but I knew it was going to fall on me. And I just stood there, and sat there, and all I could see were chess pieces. It was like on repeat, OCD of chess pieces falling, and I couldn't stop the image from my head. And I'm biting my tongue, and I'm like, I just need to leave now. And I shut my computer down, got in the car, drove to Vermont for my bachelor party by myself. And I was there for like 2 days, and I just ranting to some dude I barely knew, but how much I hated my job. And he's like, "Where do you work?" And I told him. He's like, "Oh yeah, my brother worked there for years. He just quit. He said that they basically like mentally destroyed." It was just like
You were validated.
right. And then I went back, and I was just like, I'm not well enough to be here. And I went on short-term disability, and I was out and I didn't know that I had OCD until that moment,
I
until
would say you were well enough to leave there.
right. Yes, I would say so too. And it's funny, in my studies, in my research after that, I found an article by a guy online who described the almost exact scenario at me, and I got to the bottom, and the guy worked for the same company I did. And I was just like, holy shit. And
Isn't the
then
power of validation curative?
yeah,
Like
and
you're like
literally like my
you're
first day back to that job when my stuff ran out, I got a job offer for a different place where I work now. And I don't really want to say where it is, but on the way in the door there in stone, in chiseled, they have words about the importance of health and like mental health in general. And I was like, this is where I need to be.
and
And
did
my
they
life
back it
is
up?
Yeah, 100% in my life. And I wish I could say who it was. I just don't want to miss with
No,
that.
no, no, no,
But
no.
like that
Yeah.
job has changed my life, and it's putting me in a position finally where I can be both my creative and professional self and not feel like I'm sacrificing either, which has been an enormous struggle in my life. I don't bite my tongue anymore unless I have too much caffeine. But like it was literally like it was that point where my mental health had turned into physical symptoms, and I'm like, I cannot ignore this anymore, or I'm going to start cutting myself or start doing something way more dangerous. I can feel the escalation.
And a lot of people they look for physical attributions for a lot of these symptoms, and that just ends up, and then they don't find anything, or they find things but they don't know that they're incidental, whether or not they're incidental, whether they were there all the time, or they're just, they're just looking for correlation and causation. And so you can then develop more anxiety from searching and then it almost, if you have a lot of shame, then you're like, all right, of course I deserve to have a condition no one can figure out.
Right.
And a lot of those
yeah.
are stress.
The other thing too is for me, it started revealing stuff from my childhood I'd forgotten that I used to kind of I came from a small town, and I'm not sure if it turns into therapy hour. We'll roll up to that in a second, but like I was basically forced to play sports because there was nothing else to do. My parents needed me to do something, so I used to play baseball, but I was so terrible at it, and I had such anxiety over it. They put me in right field, and I had this thing I did where I'd repeat a song lyric, and it was by Salt and Pepper in my head every time the pitcher threw the ball because I thought that would stop the ball from being hit to me. And I was like 10, 11, and that's God. And it's like that was like the beginning of this OCD thing where I basically believed in magical thinking to some degree, and it turned into a defense mechanism or some way to protect myself. And I don't it's like that Absolutely. Is and now I found a way to use the good parts of that and be able to deal with the bad, because there are good parts of that as well, the good parts of having the condition. So
totally. I mean, it's also testament to the creativity. You're so prolific with possibilities that you can paralyze yourself.
Yeah. Do you run into that? Or do you is it hard to shut it down at the end of the night?
That's why I had to give up my car. I couldn't get behind the wheel without knowing it was going to flip. And then, when I had my daughter in the car with me, I'd have like my fingernails, which weren't much because I was biting them, digging into the steering wheel. And then if I had to make a left turn and I was having a panic attack and I was having an out-of-body experience, and then I had my poor daughter in the car next to me, that was an awful, awful way to feel. Yeah, and I tried my earnestness, to treat it. I tried to use a Claire Weeks technique, passing through panic, letting it, and it worked a little bit. But like for me, it was just so aggressive that for me, my story was, that I could not allow myself to continue doing that. And then just the way the world was changing, with mass transit, like they have a great Sunrail system here, Uber, walking, I walk 2 hours a day now between, coffee shops and the gym. And, it's helped me, keep my gout in check.
Helps your heart. Yeah. Helps everything.
My heart, it de-stresses me. Like, I have to get up super early now because otherwise it's too hot and nasty in Florida. But, that's stressful. And, I've met a lot of people who, want to call me a pussy or like,
that's bullshit. People often forget that when you're driving, because I can relate to that as someone with ADHD. It sounds like I have everything, but like when you're driving a car, you have to be paying attention all the time, and I can barely pay attention all the time when I'm watching anything.
I'm fairly certain that people have flipped their shit since COVID, and driving has just gotten out of fucking.
Oh, it is. Oh, I'm Massachusetts. We people drive with their horn instead of their brakes. It's
right. And the other thing about COVID was that like it really ramped up people's clarity about what they will and won't tolerate. And so
yep.
I've because when you're ensconced in misery, and you don't know your coping mechanisms are removed for disease prevention, you are going to be inexorably changed, and you are going to not have the same tolerances that you abided.
Yeah.
When things were
it's like quitting drugs. You're not going to hang out with your old using friends. All right. Well, we could probably go on forever. And like I said, I'd love to have you back on at some point.
Dude, I'm happy to. Hopefully, when I have some more updates for you, my man, and I'm sure with the Kickstarter, you'll send me all the details about where you can get this fine stuff, and looking forward to sharing it with you, man. And this has been an honor.
Me too, man. I'm so excited about this project. I can't wait to follow the progress of it, and let's definitely keep in touch.
All right, dude. Thank you so much.
Talk to you. Bye.